What's keeping you excited right now over there at BIA? What are some of the things that maybe any hallmark projects you're really excited to tout or anything?
Our builders are still working very hard trying to get creative on how to help people get into those homes that they're building, whether it's 321 programs where they're assisting with interest rates or whether it's incentives that they're offering. They really are trying to make the dream of home ownership for people real. Our housing shortage, it's severe. We are underhoused in this region, tens of thousands of units. For every $1,000 increase in the price of a home nationally, for every $1,000, there are now 150,000 families that can no longer afford that home at that new price point. The average home price when I was a senior in high school was $135,000. We are finding that some of the affordability challenges that we've been experiencing in California for a long time are now starting to creep out to other states that have been kind of a sanctuary, where we've seen plenty of Californians and people on the West Coast fleeing because of affordability issues. Realistically, we need to have a sufficient number of units that everybody who lives in our region, or certainly the majority of people in our region, the far majority, has the ability to acquire a residence that fits within their price point. And right now, with interest rates being where they're at and home prices being where they're at because we haven't built enough, do you really want to go and make homes less affordable for people to buy?
Do we think that this trend is reversing at all?
My children live out of state, and my recommendation to them is don't come back because we don't have affordable housing for you to move into. That's the reality of the crisis that we face.
Welcome back to Between Two Shovels. On this episode, we have Tim Murphy, the CEO and president of the Northern California Building Industry Association. We dive into all those fascinating topics about housing, CEQA reform, affordability, permit fees, all the things that go into buying a home and building a home in California. Tim Murphy, Builders Industry Association. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to Between Two Shovels.
Thank you.
This is a Connector JPA podcast, and we started by talking about our project, and then we're like slowly broadening it a little bit, and I'm so glad that you're here. This is one of your favorite places. The air show is right here. I don't know.
Absolutely. It's weird being here without the Aurora jets flying overhead.
I know, right?
I actually did make a wrong turn because I was just by default driving out to the tarmac.
Yeah. I mean, just tell me a little bit. How are you involved in the air show? Because I think that's just really interesting.
I used to work for Aerojet Rocketdyne, and when my boss left for another organization, I was approached to say, well, we need to have an Aerojet representative. And I said, well, I'll find you somebody, but I'm too busy to do it myself. And they said, no, you're who we want. And 15 years later, I still serve on the board, and it's just the most amazing civic event that I think this region has.
Yeah.
It's a blast.
Oh, we took our kids regularly, but we took them this year. It was so great.
Blue Angels, always a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, and watching the F-35 that was hovering.
Yeah, it's got the vertical takeoff capabilities, and it's loud and it is impressive.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so now with that out of the way, tell me a little bit about your role at the BIA. It's relatively new, about a year.
About almost a year and a half.
Yeah. Okay. So give me like the 1 minute intro here. CEO.
President, CEO. I have 19 bosses on my board. But the North State Building Industry Association represents the home building industry for Sacramento County north to the Oregon border. And while we have a large territory, we really focus on the footprint of where housing is being built, which means that we're focused mostly on the greater Sacramento region.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, I've been involved a little bit with the BIA over years, usually more as like a guest speaker.
Yes.
I'm not a member, but
we can fix that.
I'm sure you can. Yeah. But I know so many of the folks over there, and I feel like, the Capital Southeast Connector is a project that it has a lot of shared interests.
Oh, most definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, obviously, and I've been acquainted with the connector for a long time, since the Measure A campaign.
Before me.
We put it on the
sure.
ballot.
Yeah.
But as a former Elk Grove resident and planning commissioner who commuted out to Aerojet, it became very apparent to me that we needed to have a connection to other parts of the region that didn't go through the central core of Sacramento. Highway 99 still, evokes nightmares when it comes to commutes.
Right.
But the connector, it's a necessary piece of infrastructure that we need for mobility throughout our region.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wish we could do it so much faster. But I'm trying my best, Tim. I'm trying
Harder.
my best to work harder.
We all need to work harder.
Work harder. Man, if it's comes down to the money, man. We've got I have 20 plus miles environmentally approved. I have permits. And the board has authorized right-of-way acquisition. Capital funding, man. It's so hard to find.
Well, the fact that it was approved by the voters, it was specifically called out in the Measure A, what was it, 16 years ago? I was trying to remember when the initial ballot measure went through. But, the region cries out for this type of connectivity, and it really is important that we have a mechanism that pays for it, that everybody pays into it, new development should pay for part of the way, but necessarily, we can't rely on new development to pay for the shortcomings of transportation planning or infrastructure planning, what have you, that's taken place before it.
It seems to me that people always like to add costs onto the development, and the idea that new development should pay for everything is, an easy kind of, put it on that boogeyman over there. But I mean, I know, but you please talk about it. There's got to be insane amounts of fees and costs to put on housing these days. I mean, give me a little bit of the details here.
We're actually in the middle of a study right now where we are comparing the fees that different jurisdictions have. In our preliminary report, we're still refining it, but it can vary from $80,000 to more than $140,000 per door, depending on the jurisdiction. And, that's an outrageous amount of money. More than a quarter of a home goes to the costs go to paying for things before the first, shovel of dirt is turned.
Amazing. 80,000. And
on the low end.
Right, on the low end. And so what exactly is that going into? I mean, parks, lighting, like what like
all of the above. There's infrastructure, there's transportation mitigation fees, there's wastewater connection fees, there's the infrastructure that goes into place, parks, schools, you name it. Development is paying that and more for the amenities in these communities that we're building, in communities that we need to have, by the way. Our housing shortage, it's severe. We are underhoused in this region, tens of thousands of units. And, I look at my family, when people say, how does the lack of a building affect you and your family? I say, my children live out of state, and my recommendation to them is, don't come back because we don't have affordable housing for you to move into. That's the reality of the crisis that we face.
Okay, so I have to ask you, what is affordable housing? Because that is a very loaded term, right? And I think on a podcast where we have more of an in-depth, relaxed conversation, I'm not trying to put you on the spot on anything. Break it down. When people say, I want affordable housing, everybody supports affordable housing. But what is that really when we use that term?
We prefer to say attainable housing at the BIA because everybody's got a different price point and everybody has a different number in mind when you talk about it. But realistically, we need to have a sufficient number of units that for everybody who lives in our region, or certainly the majority of people in our region, the far majority, has the ability to acquire a residence that fits within their price point. Now, for some people, that means that, they'll be able to afford whatever type of home that they want at whatever price point with whatever fees are put in place. And others will be at the other end of the scale where they might need to have some type of subsidized housing or other contributions that come to help them live or to pay rent for these places.
Right.
But when it comes to the traditional, how people think of affordable housing, there are, products that we can build, that our members do build, that are clean and safe. They're modest. They don't have a lot of bells and whistles. We did a tour for some newly elected officials and planning commissioners a few weeks back. They were studio units. One that I thought was very creative, where they actually had a loft bedroom or a loft platform above the bathroom for the sleeping area, so they can maximize the floor space for living area. But very, very modest, and still it was about $1,400 a month for that unit.
Wow. Yeah.
So it all depends on what your definition is for affordable, but really it's attainable. What we should be thinking about: how can we have housing that everybody, regardless of where they are in society, they've got the opportunity to have a dwelling and a roof over their head.
I love the term attainable. I'm gonna start using it.
Please.
So we're gonna make that go as viral as we can. I love it. I'll share with you a little bit of my story. My family co-signed on a loan for me when I was, in college, and it was a little 1,200 square foot townhome, and I think interest rates, I mean, they were like probably 7 or 8% back then, you know, and the market went up. I had some equity, leveraged it into another condo that was nearby, but it was a step up. And that's where I stayed until I got married. And it wasn't until we started to, when I got married and started to have a family, that my wife and I, we ended up selling and then leveraging up and having a nice home in Fair Oaks.
Right.
And no one should ever expect, in my opinion, to go and find that, maybe it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, pool house or a suburban pool house with a pool as their first starter home. I don't think that is attainable. I think that you have to come into the market with the limited resources that you'll have as a young investor and grow from there and be in the market.
Right.
And see it appreciate.
Well, you did it the way that a lot of people do it. And the reason why home ownership, we think it's so valuable, it really helps to unlock your own personal wealth and how you can leverage that to make those next steps as you've done. And as my wife and I have done.
Mm-hmm.
We were first married, we were renters. And then when we were ready to start our family and we wanted a home, we got that assistance from another family member to assist us with the down payment.
Mm-hmm.
But that was on a home that was, $150,000. And I remember being in high school. I grew up here in Sacramento, and the average home price when I was a senior in high school, so this is 1984, was $135,000. And I thought, how in the world am I going to be able to afford a home that costs that much? And as I said, a new starter home these days in this region, about $425,000,
Wow.
to start. And so, if you don't have those resources or the family assistance, it's going to take a long time to save for that down payment, which is why we're seeing the average age of first-time home buyers, it's continuing to climb.
Interesting.
To the late 30s and even early 40s.
Really?
And if
Wow.
you're planning on starting a family,
Is that unique
rough.
to Northern California? Is that unique to California? I mean,
more of a California situation, but we are finding that nationally, according to the National Association of Home Builders, of which we're a federation member of that national organization, we are finding that some of the affordability challenges that we've been experiencing in California for a long time are now starting to creep out to other states that have been kind of a sanctuary, where we've seen plenty of Californians and people on the West Coast fleeing because of affordability issues.
Sure. The one-way U-Hauls out to Arizona or Tennessee.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do we think that this trend is reversing at all? And I'm going to ask this question about the housing reform legislation that we see in the news. And one in particular that I want to ask you about is CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. And we're told that it's going to have a big benefit when it comes to housing.
It is a move in the right direction, but it's not the panacea that we hope it would be. Certainly, any type of CEQA reform, especially CEQA that benefits housing, is, as I said, a step in the right direction.
Sure.
What the governor did with his cop to it was a brilliant maneuver to get the CEQA reform by putting into the state budget. So this was a must-pass type of situation.
It's good chess there. Someone's playing chess.
They were able to implement some CEQA reforms that make things better primarily for infill housing. Infill housing, we need all kinds of housing.
Sure.
However, when our polling shows that 70 to 75% of the public want to live in a suburban or a rural setting, putting all of our chips on urban housing is not going to be the solution that the public wants it to be. However, along with that, we did get a couple of other benefits from that. There were a 6-year freeze that was put on energy code updates, which is important.
Oh my gosh.
You might know that the energy code cycle, it goes every 3 years. And California being the environmental leader that California wants to be, they really try to push the envelope, with decarbonization, going all electric,
I've experienced it. I replaced my HVAC a couple years ago, so I know. Yeah.
However, our argument is can we please see and measure the efficacy of the latest code cycle before you put even more stringent requirements in place?
Totally reasonable.
Homes that are built today are the most energy efficient that have ever been built in the history of the world.
So true.
It's so true. And when I'm not one to say that you can improve upon perfection, but can we allow for the market to adjust to that for a little bit longer before we move on to the next one? So we were granted 6 years out of this. And another area is that model homes were able, once that they were the plans were submitted and approved, you now have 10 years before any code changes would affect that. So unless the builder substantially changes the nature of that model home, that plan, they've got a 10-year window when they don't have to make any changes or
was that a problem? Was that a real problem that builders
constantly
really
constantly? And it's not just because of
unfair
state codes. You have the local jurisdictions that they want to put in the REACH codes. I remember there was a local elected, when talking about decarbonization, their jurisdiction would have been the 40th jurisdiction to attain that. And they were at the dais pounding their gavel saying, I never wanted this jurisdiction to be 40th in anything, let alone this. So we're going to be even more aggressive with that. Okay, that comes at a cost. And right now, with interest rates being where they're at, and home prices being where they're at because we haven't built enough, do you really want to go and make homes less affordable for people to buy? And we haven't even scratched the topic on homelessness and what we have in this region. So back to your original question, how were the CEQA reforms? They were a very small step in a very long journey that we need the state to take.
Well, every journey starts with the first step, Tim.
And this was a good first step, but it's not the game winner that people would have you think.
I know what you're saying, and I'm not surprised to learn that it's infill focused. That has been a topic in transportation worlds for a long time. We've seen this shift from the measurement of transportation impact through what's called a level of service to now VMT, and how that changed things so dramatically in terms of development. And I can only imagine, some of your members have been completely, they've probably had to adjust dramatically.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought up VMT, because another element in the state budget with the maneuvering was the establishment of a VMT bank, with the carbon credits. And this is incredibly alarming for our industry. We believe that this has the potential to add in excess of $20,000, $25,000 impacts per unit going forward, if not more. This was established without having sufficient guardrails, and our industry is desperately seeking the guardrails to put on this, because this could, add the price of a basic Honda Civic to the price of every home, just right on top of the existing price.
And well, let me just tell you, it's not theory. In transportation, I know of 2 projects that I could point to immediately. I have the data. There was a project in Contra Costa County where they paid over $300 million in a VMT mitigation. And then the Yolo Causeway HOV lane project, I think it was $55 million in VMT mitigation. Now, I mean, to me, that's just astounding. And here's how I talked about this with the supervisor you know well. I was like, look, when it comes to environmental mitigation, I'm actually proud that the connector JPA mitigates our environmental impacts. Open space preservation is very popular. I've lived here my entire life. We all want our farmland and grazing and ranching and things like that. And so the connector project had a $15 million set aside for open space mitigation. Maybe that number has creeped up closer to $20 million over the period of time. All right. But think about that and how it's like, oh, okay, $15 million. That sounds reasonable. And then you go and you look at some of these numbers, 55 million, 300 million. And they're saying that's only a percentage of the mitigation. That's not 100%. They're like, oh, we'll accept 55 million, but really you should be doing, 100 or something, right? These numbers are out of control. I call it highway robbery. That's just me, because I think this whole VMT mitigation thing, we've been seeing it in the transportation world for many years. So I'm not surprised to hear that it would add substantial costs to the price of a home.
It would. You bring up the Yolo Causeway. I've lived my life in the Sacramento region. The home that I bought wasn't a brand new home. It was an existing home that had been built in the 1960s. I drive the Yolo Causeway. I can understand putting a toll lane there to allow for that. But, our transportation and gas taxes are supposed to be doing this, and they're not being leveraged the right way in order to provide for these improvements for this additional infrastructure. It's got to be borne by everybody.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. The first time they proposed that toll lane, they wanted to toll the entire causeway, like all of the lanes. So they're like, well, we'll just do 2, and then okay, we'll just do 1.
I just crossed the Bay Bridge a couple of weeks ago. It was $8 and that was everybody.
Oh, man. What's the Golden Gate, like 20? I feel like it's something a lot like more than 8. Yeah. Well, what are so CEQA reform is kind of, that's been a hot topic, but things coming up in your industry, things that you're working on now, what are some of the preview for us, some of the topics that the BIA is really tackling right now?
It all comes down to local advocacy. I mean, that's the what our association is meant to do. We've got 530 plus members. We represent the major home builders in this region, as well as a lot of trade partners and the other industries that come along with that. And basically, we're just trying to keep a lid on, we understand fees come in, they have to be raised, they provide for very important things, parks, schools, public safety, fire stations, things like that. We need jurisdictions to be more judicious in how they address their fees. And so, making sure that there's definitely a very strong nexus that's established with what they need to charge, with what the actual costs of the services are.
Important word there, nexus.
Exactly. And it's also being sure that they're doing it on a regular basis. When a jurisdiction doesn't raise their fees for 7 or 10 years, then all of a sudden they have to take a fee from this level to this level. That's a very large jump. And in the scheme of things, that can be, very hard for our industry to swallow. We want to be partners. We understand there are costs that come with maintaining roads. There are costs that come with providing sewers and water delivery to homes and having good schools and safe parks in great communities. We all want these things. Mm-hmm. We just have to figure out how do we push on the levers at the right time in the right sequence in order for these things to happen so people aren't priced out.
Yeah.
One of the things that, was very shocking to me, I've been in this position, as I said, for a year and a half. I'm learning a lot about home building and all the costs that go with it. For every $1,000 increase in the price of a home nationally, for every $1,000, there are now 150,000 families that can no longer afford that home at that new price point.
Wow.
Just for $1,000.
Right.
And so when you talk about, we want to mitigate this and it's only going to cost this much per square foot, a dollar per square foot in a house. Well, that $1,700 just put 150,000 families into a lower priced home, or
right.
if they could find a home at that price. So that's really, it's helping elected officials and the regulatory agencies, our local planning departments and the like, understand here's how projects are financed, here's how our builders or our developers are able to develop those lands, how builders are able to build on them for an affordable price. Because, home building, this isn't an industry where, AI necessarily or 3D printing is going to be able to build dwellings, at least not for a long time.
3D printed homes. I know there's a couple of them out there, but yeah.
Nothing that I think you or I would want to live in.
No. So when we talk about affordability and attainability, do you guys have programs, or do you partner with people on first-time home buyers? Like, what if someone is looking to buy a home for the first time? Are there resources with the BIA? What's that world there?
We don't do anything as far as like first-time home buyer resources, but when you're talking about when communities are charging fees for affordable housing in order to create funds that help to provide that, BIA was instrumental in starting Housing Trust Placer, which helps to provide homes that are built and sold to people who would qualify for a lower level of affordability or attainability.
Yeah.
And we're very proud about coming up with creative solutions like that. There are people who will look at the BIA and say, well, you're purely a political organization and you're just fighting fees left and right. And we don't see ourselves that way. We see ourselves as being partners with the local jurisdiction, because what's fundamental is of our organization and what we fight for is providing housing for all. Mm-hmm. In addition to the BIA, there are
great slogan.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. That's what we use. Mm-hmm. There are two other organizations under our umbrella that go to help to find opportunities for people who could benefit from the home building industry. So in addition to the association, we have the Building Careers Foundation, which is a construction workforce education organization. We have a program that we run here in Rancho Cordova in partnership with the Home Builders Institute. It's called the Build Strong Academy. And every 9 to 10 weeks, we run through 2 cohorts of 20 people each. And over that 9 weeks, they receive a crash course in construction education so they can find careers in the industry.
That's great.
And we provide that for free.
Yeah, that's amazing.
As well as other workforce opportunities that we do with the foundation. The second organization is HomeAid Sacramento. And
HomeAid?
HomeAid Sacramento.
Okay.
That was founded 30 years ago, next year, by John Orr, who is a much respected association professional. He was not my immediate predecessor, but he led the BIA for a number of years. But John and some other forward-thinking builders in our region started HomeAid Sacramento, and they provide assistance for organizations that provide transitional or temporary housing for those who are unhoused. Mm-hmm. Projects like the Sacramento Children's Receiving Home, Weave, St. John's Shelter, AMI Housing, and Placer. There are a number of organizations around this region to where our members have come together to build this type of housing. And we do it in partnership with nonprofits that provide the services. So the arrangement is that a nonprofit has to come up with 50% plus $1 of the cost for a project. And then HomeAid provides the balance, whether it's through our own fundraising, but mostly it's through in-kind contributions of materials and labor, and our members build it.
That's very cool.
And it's an outstanding way for us to hold is that while we, advocacy wise, we look at what we're doing for brand new housing, we're also very mindful about what it takes to build that new housing through the workforce development, and how do we help those in our community who are unable to attain housing for themselves, and how can we give them the stability and a roof over their head while they get their feet underneath them.
If somebody wanted to get into this program and learn some of the home building, where do they go?
They can go to building-careers.org. That's our foundation website, and they can get information about our programs there.
Beautiful.
But it really is phenomenal. We just had the executive leadership and board officers from the National Association of Home Building out to visit us. They were on their California West Coast swing, and we took them to go see the program. And we had an hour scheduled. They stayed for 2. They talked with all the participants. They were extraordinarily proud about what we were able to accomplish here. And the other thing I'll just note to share to celebrate the credibility of the people that we have that run that program. We have an 88% placement into the industry of the graduates from the program.
Yeah.
And it's even higher if you count those that go on to pursue additional construction education programs. So we're very proud of what we do there.
I love that, man. That's great. We're a little bit more engaged in the construction, heavy civil construction,
Right.
but being right here in Rancho Cordova, that's a excellent, resource. I'm glad to hear that that's happening. So, let me switch things up on you here a little bit and ask you what's keeping you excited right now over there at BIA? What are some of the things that maybe any hallmark projects you're really excited to tout or anything?
Well, it's hard to single out the projects of any single
Sure,
building
I
while being
understand.
reported on camera. But I just have to say, all of our builders, they're very mindful of what it takes to get into homes for people who are starting out. Right now, I think it's no secret for everybody is that all the benefits that we used to have here in Sacramento compared to other parts of the state are beginning to evaporate a little bit. The market is now tough in Sacramento. I think we've gotten everybody who wants to come from the Bay Area
They're here now.
Arrived. But seriously, our builders are still working very hard trying to get creative on how to help people get into those homes that they're building, whether it's 321 programs where they're assisting with interest rates, or whether it's incentives that they're offering. They really are trying to make the dream of home ownership for people real in questionable economic times like this.
I get it.
If we can get the interest rate down, if the Fed will go to about 6, I think, or maybe just below 6 might become our new normal. Every time in the last year and a half, every time there's been a little bit of a drop getting us closer to 6, we've seen a spike in sales.
Sure.
And I think 6 is kind of that number.
Okay.
If it's lower, I'm happy to say that I called that one wrong. But I think the things that probably you and I had benefited from, which is a sub 3% mortgage.
I'm locked in under 3.
I love my home, but it's also kind of, we're handcuffed now because I'm not going to, it would take a lot for me to move into a brand new home when I've got such a great interest rate.
I think that sentiment's everywhere. I talk to so many people who are like, well, it doesn't make any sense for me to sell or switch out.
People are waiting for the bottom of the market.
Yeah.
And we're just not quite there yet.
Tim, what questions do you have for me?
What can the housing industry do to help the JPA achieve its goals and get the connector built?
I'd say continue your advocacy. I mean, honestly, it's so important at local level. Certainly at the local level. I mean, the state is the state, and we have our own programs that we work through Senate Bill 1, the Road Repair and Accountability Act. But at the local level, having consistent advocacy and voice and support of the project is so huge. And your members have been great. You've been great. Thank you so much for being here and talking. I've known you for a long time now, and
We have known each other for a
been a
while.
little bit of a mentor for me. So I really appreciate this.
Well, that's
and so
very kind. Thank you.
yeah, and I probably should have engaged you earlier on a topic. We were exploring enhanced infrastructure finance districts, and we were looking primarily here in Rancho Cordova. It didn't really go anywhere, but we're always trying to get creative with how to get some sort of local funding into the mix, and nobody wants to add new fees onto housing, which is not what an EIFD is. But I'm curious if your members or the BIA in general have had any positions on it, or have you explored it as a organization in any way?
I can't say that we haven't. I'm not aware if we've explored that prior to my coming on board. However, there are some concepts about EIFDs where if they were applied on a broader scale, that with an EIFD, it allows you the opportunity for a jurisdiction to provide resources banking against the benefit that would come with those properties that get enhanced.
Future tax increments.
A lot without a building on it suddenly becomes a lot more valuable as a tax resource once there's a developed property on it and you're getting higher property tax fees on that. Yeah. There could be some mechanisms that are put into place that allow for the jurisdictions to look at it not on a project by project basis, but something perhaps even on a more expanded basis. I'm fortunate right now that my board chair, Clifton Taylor of Taylor Builders, he is probably one of the most brilliant development financing people I've ever come across. And so looking at creative opportunities is something that we have been doing and will continue to do so after his time as chair of the board is up. But
if he was here, he'd be saying it's all his wife. You know that, right?
He would be saying it's Isabel. Yeah.
It's Isabel. She's the finance.
Well, I married up as well, so they make us look good.
Shout out to Clifton. I worked for Richland at the time. It was when he was there.
Yeah.
This is probably 15 years ago, and we were doing some work out there on Highway 65, and so I got to meet him, and I remember hearing some of the stories about the baseball team up there and things like that. So I don't know if he still has that.
Still has the Potters.
That's awesome.
It's a lot of fun,
I've never been. I need to head up there.
It's for those who are listening, the Lincoln Potters are it's a summer college wood bat baseball league. And it's reminiscent of the old the Cape Cod baseball leagues back on the East Coast, and it really is a great time if you need to take the kids, you need to go out for a game because it really is a slice of Americana.
I love it. Okay, I'll have to check it out. Well, Tim Murphy, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed this time, and we're just having a conversation, and this is so informative and. This is Between Two Shovels. I hope you share it with all your friends and your members.
I will. Have me back. This was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.